You ever walk through a haunted house and wonder, what if something in there wasn't fake? In 1976, inside a creaky old amusement ride called Laugh in the Dark, that question stopped being hypothetical. Because when a stagehand accidentally broke one of the props, it revealed one of the scariest things I've ever seen. This is the story of the day an amusement park employee found a dead man, real, not rubber, hanging from the ceiling, mummified, painted, forgotten. His name was Elmer McCurdy, and he'd been dead for 65 years. I was a seasonal ride tech at Coney Island that summer. Young, underpaid, mostly working late nights repairing old animatronics and repainting fake corpses. Laugh in the Dark was a joke, a rickety, barely lit ride full of plastic skeletons and dusty devil masks. It smelled like sweat, mildew, and spilled soda. One night, a light bulb stopped working suddenly. I told the manager and he sent Greg over with a new light bulb and told me to replace it. I grabbed a ladder and climbed up to the dead light bulb to one of the ceiling props. A hanged man, strung by the neck, swinging gently in the fake wind. He'd always been there, dusty, faded, missing 2 fingers on one hand. On my way up, I knocked the prop slightly and an arm twisted, almost falling off. As I reached out to adjust him, the arm snapped off. It didn't crack like fiberglass, it broke like bone. I looked down. Inside the broken arm was something that should never be inside a prop. A real human humerus, yellowed, porous, hollow. I nearly fell off the ladder. They shut down the ride that night. The cops came, then the coroner. I watched from behind the barricade as they examined the body. He was covered in layers of paint, fluorescent red, black, a bit of glow-in-the-dark green. His jaw had been wired shut, eye sockets hollow, but the skin, what was left of it, was leathery, dried, preserved somehow. His death wasn't recent, not by decades. That's when the real story started to unfold. Elmer McCurdy, a failed train robber in 1911, shot dead by a sheriff's posse after a drunken heist gone wrong. No family came to claim him, so the funeral home put him on display, charged people a nickel to see the embalmed bandit. And for 65 years that body was sold, traded, leased, passed from freak show to sideshow, wax museum to carnival. Sometimes he was labeled as a mummy, sometimes a dead cowboy. Eventually, no one remembered he was real until I broke his arm. But here's what still chills me. They buried Elmer after that, gave him a real grave, cemented it over so no one could steal him again. But that ride, Laugh in the Dark, it was torn down a few years later. I should have never gotten on that ride, not after what I'd heard, but I was 14. And when you're 14, you don't listen to warnings. Not even the ones that scream from the pit of your stomach. Especially not when your friends are all laughing, and the air smells like popcorn and engine grease, and the neon lights of the carnival feel like magic. There was something about the Gravitron. Something wrong. It looked like a spaceship gutted from the inside, walls lined with padded panels, all slanted and stained. The operator wore a faded vest and had this cough, wet and phlegmy. He never looked you in the eye, just pressed the button with that nicotine-stained finger. They said it pins you to the wall when it spins, that you can't move even if you try. They were right. I could feel the blood drain from my arms, pressure digging into my back, my stomach turning inside out. Everyone laughed, except her, the girl. She was across from me, long black hair, pale, just staring, not at me, but through me. She didn't scream, not even when she started to slip. Her feet rose off the ground first, just a few inches. Then her knees buckled, and I swear, she mouthed something. I couldn't hear it over the ride's roar. but it looked like, "Help me." She dropped, straight down, slipped beneath the rubber safety flap, like she was never there. And then she was everywhere. I will never forget that sound. The sound of her body, flung like a rag doll, smashing against the walls, over and over. Thud, thud, thud. Blood sprayed. Bits of her jacket, pink with sequins, splattered against the window near my head. And the worst part? The ride didn't stop. It just kept going, like it was hungry. When it finally slowed down, the air inside was thick, hot, sticky. The music outside kept playing. Kids kept laughing. And she wasn't moving. Her body was crumpled near the floor's edge, bent wrong, eyes open, and no one screamed. Not until the door opened. They shut the carnival down, that night and for good. Turns out the Gravitron wasn't supposed to be operating. It had failed 2 inspections. The safety barrier had been patched with duct tape. There was an article, months later, said her death triggered a wave of inspections across the US. New regulations, higher standards, a national crackdown. They buried her body. And I haven't been to a carnival since. They told us never to enter the mine scrambler while it was moving, but Alyssa did, and I still hear the metallic crunch when the ride took her head off. It was the summer before I transferred colleges. I took a job as a ride operator at Braden's Funland, the kind of small-town amusement park that smells like burnt sugar, rust, and sweat. The mine scrambler was the park's pride, a spinning ride of whirling arms, flashing lights, and pounding bass that made your chest vibrate. The thing had a history. A kid broke his arm on it 5 years ago. A month ago, a woman claimed she got whiplash so bad she couldn't turn her neck afterward. But management just slapped on new paint and told us, if it ain't shut down, it ain't broken. Then Alyssa joined the team. She was only 21, bright smile, and wavy hair she tucked behind one ear. She'd just come back to town after some rough time in college. We bonded over long shifts and dumb safety drills no one ever followed. She joked the mine scrambler looked like it was held together with chewing gum and prayers. She wasn't wrong. The control box sparked if you touched it the wrong way. The seatbelts clicked shut, but sometimes popped open mid-ride. We had this silent agreement, pretend everything was fine. But Alyssa cared too much. That was the problem. It was a humid Thursday night. We were on the late shift, and the ride was still going when some kid's hat flew off. Standard. Happens all the time. We usually waited until the next ride cycle ended, but Alyssa was standing near the gate, chewing her lip, watching the kid cry. She gave me a quick look, like, just 1 second, okay? Then she ducked under the safety rail and stepped inside. I screamed her name, but the ride's arms were already spinning, whirring with blinding speed, strobes flashing red and blue. I could barely see her. Then I heard it, a sound that didn't belong. It wasn't a scream, it was final. And when the ride ground to a halt, she was lying there, crushed, twisted. She was gone. They closed the ride for 2 days. 2, that's all she got. Then it reopened like nothing happened. No flowers, no plaque. Just a fresh coat of paint and a do not enter sign zip-tied to defense. Her parents sued. The media picked it up, and still, the park kept operating until public pressure finally forced it to shut the ride down. But by then, it was too late. Now, every night I wonder, if I'd shouted louder, if I'd grabbed her arm, would she still be alive? You ever hear a scream that doesn't end? I don't mean a short, startled shriek. I mean a scream that's torn from someone's throat, mid-air, because they know they're about to die. That sound has been living in my head ever since the fair opened last summer. We were all there for opening day. Me, my sister Jamie, and her boyfriend Mike. Sun blazing, music blaring, the scent of fried dough and grease coating the air like syrup. The fair had this energy, like a pressure cooker full of joy ready to pop. But looking back, there was something off. They kept announcing the rides had just passed inspection, over and over, on the loudspeakers. Too many times, almost like they were trying to convince themselves. Jamie loved heights. She dragged us to the fireball first. It's that pendulum ride, you know the kind. You get strapped into a circle of seats, then it swings back and forth, higher, higher, until it does full loops. The line was long, but she was excited, so we waited. The guy operating it, he looked like he hadn't slept. Pale, twitchy, kept wiping his hands on his pants. I joked to Mike, looks like this dude's afraid of his own ride. He didn't laugh. We got on. I was wedged between Jamie and this big guy in a denim jacket. Everything locked into place with this loud clank. Then we were moving. At first, it was exhilarating. That stomach-lurching drop. The wind slapping against your face, people screaming but laughing. I glanced at Jamie, eyes wide, mouth open in pure joy. But halfway through the second full swing, I heard it. A sound no ride should ever make. It was like the ride exhaled and something gave way. I looked up. One of the support beams near the top was tilting. No, cracking. Then came the scream. The man in denim, he wasn't screaming at first. He was yelling something. A name, or maybe a warning. But then, he was gone. The seat next to me was empty. He'd been flung 30 feet. Straight down. Everything froze. Except the ride didn't. It kept going. One more swing. Then another seat gave out. People were being ripped out of their restraints, thrown like dolls. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't scream. I couldn't move. My entire body was clenched, waiting to feel the straps give, for the world to tilt, for the sky to open up and swallow me. And then it stopped. Everything was quiet. Until it wasn't. They got us off the ride one by one. Jamie was sobbing. Mike was shaking. I saw him, denim jacket man, lying twisted on the gravel. His neck was wrong, his mouth still open, like he was still screaming. We weren't allowed to leave, not until hours later. Officials showed up, cameras, flashing lights. The next day, the news said it was a tragic accident, said the ride had passed inspection just hours earlier. They blamed it on corrosion. Said one of the support beams had been rotting from the inside out. Sometimes, when I'm trying to sleep, I still hear that scream. They called it corrosion, but I think something else was hungry that day, and it wasn't done.